Hey guys, welcome to my first drive video on Audi's brand new RS3. I'm out here in beautiful Austria and the car is wearing winter tyres, thankfully, if you check out my surroundings. In a couple of days time though, I'll be driving it back to the UK and I'm actually going to get some summer tyres put back on it. Although winter tyres are very good, they give you a very different feeling to what's underneath you compared to the summer tyres, which we basically have all year round. So please feel free to leave any comments and suggestions below for what you want me to do with this car once I get it back into the UK on normal tyres. We all know car prices have gone a little wild over the past 6 or 12 months. In my recent video on BMW's M240i xDrive, well, the comment section was full of people in disbelief of the fact that that started at 47 odd grand. Well, I hope you're sitting down for this one. As of 1st of December, when car prices go up yet again, the base model RS3, base spec trim with no options, is going to be 54 grand. The black edition will be 58.5, and the Vorsprung will be £61,000. And that's before you put on expensive options like the carbon ceramics that this car has. That's part of a pack, which is another £5,500. And that's just carbon ceramic brakes on the front axle. The rears are the regular braking system. But remember, the RS3 is more of a direct competitor to the incoming BMW M2. And I'm pretty sure that that M2 will be retailing at least £60,000. So actually, when you look at it like that, the pricing on this is just about right. And the base spec one is almost good value, dare I say it. And let's face it, most people buy these on finance and I'm sure they're going to be about £550 a month with a few £1,000s down. We should be thankful though, because if you lived in Ireland, well, you'd be paying over €100,000 for an RS3. That's more than £85,000. So although 55 to 60 grand is a lot of money, we're still paying 25 to 30 grand less than Ireland do. Under the bonnet, we find Audi's iconic 2.5 litre 5-cylinder turbocharged engine. This is the same basic lump that was in the original RS3 when that launched back in 2012. Obviously, Audi have done a lot with the engine over the years, and it now produces 400 horsepower and 500 newton meters of torque. That's the same power figure as the outgoing RS3, but the torque figure has gone up 20 newton meters. That's connected to a 7-speed dual clutch S-tronic gearbox, and all that power and torque is fed to the ground via a torque vectoring 4-wheel drive system. This RS3 has a claimed 0 to 62 figure of just 3.8 seconds and a limited top speed of 155 miles an hour, although this car has the RS dynamic pack fitted to it, which includes those carbon ceramics we've already talked about, and that lifts the limiter to 180 miles an hour. And after spending some time on the Autobahn yesterday, I'm in no doubt that it will hit that limiter. Has 19-inch wheels all round, but it does have a staggered tyre setup, and not the way you might think. So the rears are 245 section and the fronts are 265 section. So the opposite way around to my M2 competition. And I think Audi have done that to eliminate some of the understeer and exaggerate some of that oversteer that the RS3 has always lacked. And we'll find that out shortly. In terms of styling, well, I don't think pictures do this car too much justice. A bit like with the S3, I really think it looks much better in real life. It is crying out for some spaces though, and you can't blame Audi or any manufacturer for that because there's so many regulations that basically mean you have to have your wheels a certain amount of distance inside your wings, and that's why all modern cars look like they need spacers. You don't want to ruin it by putting massive spacers on there, but 10 or 12 mil all round would certainly improve the way it looks. Owning the current M3, well, I'm used to getting stick about its grills, but can we just take a second to look at the size of this grille? I mean, it's 75% of the front end of this car. I don't understand why Audi don't get more stick about their grills, but at least it is real grillage or ventage. Pretty much everything down there serves a purpose except for this one across the top. So bravo to Audi for doing that. My favourite angle of the new RS3 is around the back end. I love the trademark twin RS oval tailpipes, although behind them, well, there's another pair of exhausts, but they still look really good. Jumping inside, well, I could be in any A3 or S3. There's literally nothing aside from the RS badge on the bottom of this optional flat bottom steering wheel that tells me I'm in an RS car. The plastics are exactly the same down low and on the center console here, which I actually think are a bit cheap in a regular A3. In this 60 plus grand press car, well, they really do stand out to me. These seats are great. I believe they're the same ones that are in the S3, which are brilliant seats, and the RS, you get some Alcantara style material down the center, which in turn gives you a lot more support. So they're comfortable and they're very supportive. Driving position, well, I've remarked with the new A3 and S3 that Audi have really improved on the older models. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And remember, I'm pretty tall, and I really think that this would accommodate all shapes and sizes. Audi have introduced yet another option for your dashboard layout on their virtual cockpit. I'm not convinced by it at all. It's a bit messy, it's a bit confusing. I really think they've only done that to add something to the brochure for the new RS3. I'm going to revert back to the traditional dials. What I do miss, and this car doesn't have, is what the previous generation of RS3 had, the big circular RS dial in the middle, rev counter and a digital speedo in the middle. That was the best virtual cockpit layout as far as I'm concerned. This latest RS3 also has 2 new drive modes. So along with efficiency, comfort, auto and dynamic, which essentially the entire Audi range already have, this car has RS Performance and RS Torque Rear, which they say should only be used on private land and tracks. And that's when that torque vectoring really comes into play, and hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate that shortly. It really makes the car feel agile, and it makes the car feel rear driven, which is completely new for the RS3. Quick reminder that we are on winter tyres, so it's very hard to talk about exactly what a car feels like when it's on winter rubber, even when it is cold, because it still moves around a fair amount on the tread blocks. I've never been the biggest RS3 fan. Sure, they've been very fast, very capable, practical, cool packages, but just not driver focused enough for me. When you compare it to something like a BMW M2 or even the M140, that was more of a driver focused car, and therefore gave me a lot more of what I was looking for. When the current S3 launched about a year ago, well, I was really impressed with that car. Again, S3s of the past have never really impressed me. Capable, but slightly numb. The current one, well, that seemed playful. I remember the first time I drove that along one of my favourite roads in slippery conditions, and it had some lift-off oversteer, which is not a term you'd ever use with an S or an RS product. So after spending a bit of time in the S3, I did have high hopes for this very latest RS3. And in short, from the 24 hours I've spent in this car, I have to say it's very impressive, and it's far more of a driver's car than an RS3 has ever been. In fact, I think it might be far more of an RS car than any RS car. It really is that good. Before we get to the spicy stuff, let's talk about what this car has been like to live with for the past 24 hours. I've done a lot of kilometers in it, ranging from driving through Munich to flat out on the Autobahn, and then on this glorious pass all day today. This car's got the optional adaptive suspension, and I have to say, when you're in comfort, which is the softest setting, the ride quality is exceptional. There's a couple of caveats to that though. Number one is, well, I've been in Germany and Austria, and their roads, or road surface at least, is a lot better than we get in the UK. And number two, when you're on winter tyres, they're a little bit softer, so they do tend to give you a slightly better ride. But I can tell you, at home on summers in comfort, this car is still going to be very, very comfortable. I was slightly concerned that when you'd put it into dynamic, it wouldn't feel stiff enough or dynamic enough, but it feels really good. It supports its weight really well. In fact, it's not that heavy. This is 1,570 kilos, which is a good 100+ kilos lighter than, let's say, the incoming M240i X-Drive. So it's no heavyweight by all means, but it supports its weight really well in dynamic. When you put it into RS Performance, well, apparently that's been set up to be really good around the Nürburgring, so it's not overly stiff. That would be a good mode for the UK and our fairly average roads. So in terms of living with as a daily proposition, providing you've got the adaptive suspension, of course, because I haven't tried a passive car, well, it's really, really comfortable. And it's one of those cars that if you just drive it normally for hours on end, you almost forget its potential, because it feels, can I use the word boring? Well, let's just say it feels really good and really comfortable, and it's hard to get your head around the fact that it can change into such an animal when you hit a bit of road like this. Let's be honest, most people buy the RS3 for that glorious 2.5 litre 5-cylinder turbocharged engine, and for good reason. It's amazing. It's got better over the years, and this particular one feels even sweeter than ever. It seems to rev a little bit better than the outgoing generation. Obviously you've got that slight increase in torque, but the most important thing for me with that engine is the way it sounds. The 2012 RS3, well, that sounded incredible with the sports exhaust on it, but obviously over the past 9 years, regulations have become tighter and people have tried to hushen up exciting cars. So the previous or outgoing RS3, to me, never sounded that great unless you did something with the exhausts. So I was really worried that this latest car would be even quieter, but I really am happy to report that it sounds epic. I'm not sure if it's all organic sound, i.e. coming out the engine and the exhausts, but even if it is being piped around the cabin, well, I'm not adverse to it. I think it sounds really, really good. I can't believe that this is a car on sale in 2021, well, 2022, because we're just over a month away. And that to me is really important. Not only does this car feel dynamically miles better, they've retained or improved that glorious 5-put engine. I really do feel like I'm in a 1980s Audi Quattro going up here. It really, really does give you that feeling. It's epic, just feels great. I have to admit, when I first jumped in this car yesterday, it did feel a little bit odd, almost like it has rear wheel steering. And obviously that was the torque vectoring working. And I wasn't a fan for the first, let's say, 3 or 4 hours. It just felt odd. But now I've spent an entire day in the car and I'm used to its handling dynamics. It feels really good. And I love all of the new drive settings. I've spent most of today in dynamic with everything switched off. Just like with the Golf R Mark 8 that I had recently, you've got to turn all the traction control systems off in these Volkswagen Group 4-wheel drives, because otherwise they're just very intrusive and they also induce danger. By which I mean, if you're coming into a hairpin, if the car starts understeering, if all the safety aids are turned on, I find that they actually work against you. Whereas if you've got everything off, it's you doing the steering and the braking and the driving essentially, and the car seems to respond better for doing that. The throttle response could be better. It's definitely something that this engine suffers from. There's a bit of low down turbo lag, if you like. Couple that to Audi's recent throttle, which I just find to be quite dead. There's no feel in it, just like with the RS6 and the RS7. I don't know if they've done it to improve their WLTP figures when they test them, but it's just not the nicest pedal. I'm used to it now, but I'm sure if I jumped straight out of my M2 or my M3, it would feel a bit soggy and unresponsive. And you really need to anticipate that unresponsive throttle. So when you're mid-corner, you tend to pick it up a lot earlier than you would, say, in my M2 or M3. So I'm picking it up here before I even get to the apex, just so on corner exit, I've got the boost essentially. Otherwise, it just bogs down, especially at altitude. But once again, you do get used to that and you just pick up the throttle nice and early. The last thing to talk about is the brakes. Now, I haven't tried an RS3 on the standard or regular steel brakes, but even that setup has massive 6-piston calipers on the front axle. These carbon ceramics, well, they've been mighty all day. I haven't felt any fade, as you'd expect, and I'm sure they'd be mighty on track. Now, the reason the RS3 in general has got such amazing braking performance in my head is because of those massive 265 section front tyres we talked about earlier. The front axle is just able to dig in, even conditions like today. It just stops on a dime. You can trail brake in. It feels fantastic. So once again, I'm talking about an RS3 as feeling fantastic, and that kind of sums up this car. It really does feel good. It might be close to 60 grand with a few options on it, but that's the way the market is today, and I have to say, it's a pretty tempting purchase. Hopefully you've enjoyed this first drive video on the brand new Audi RS3. I will be doing another one on this car once I get back to the UK, and it's on summer tyres, as we talked about in the intro. So please make sure you leave any suggestions and comments below on what you want me to cover, things that I've not covered today essentially. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you at the next video very, very soon. Cheers.